So I have a few thoughts that are rolling around in my head with all the different parent coaching sessions I've been doing recently, specifically with parents of teenagers who are experiencing this ADHD rage and dysregulation that they're experiencing with their teenagers. And I've kept a few notes here from all these sessions and I wanted to share them with you all. Um, and to remind you of certain things that teenagers with ADHD are scanning their environment all the time because they're so dysregulated. And as I've mentioned so many times before, they are sensitive to rejection. This rejection sensitive dysphoria is so real for them that they are constantly looking for people in their environment to be judging and labeling and analyzing and reacting in some way. And they start to get wrapped up in that. So they are pretty good scanners and they may not always be accurate, but they are watching you. They're watching your face. They're listening to your tone. They're watching behaviors. They're looking at the eye contact you're making with the other sibling, their other sibling, or with your spouse, or with your partner, with a grandparent. They're noticing these things. And something that I talked with several parents about over the past few weeks is um, they start to get fused with this identity that there's something flawed or wrong or damaged about them. They they don't always tie it in with their ADHD, but especially if you have a teenager who wasn't diagnosed until they were a teenager. And so you experience years and years of this dysregulated emotions and dysregulation of thought, of behaviors, of immaturity, of impulsivity, of silliness, of just all these different things that are going on. And so they've pulled out of you a reactive parent, a parent who's annoyed, who's overcorrecting, who's lecturing, who's punishing, who's always dishing out these consequences, who's always these things, trying to teach them a teachable lesson. Um, and they start to become fused with this identity that I'm the bad kid, that I'm the one I'm the reason why we can't go on vacation. It's the reason why we can't have a good family dinner. We can't go out for an outing or we can't hang out with friends because I always ruin things. Um, and they may not always say that out loud, or they may not even think that. They may project it onto you, thinking, well, you're the reason why I get bad, or because you treat me this way, or you speak this way. And this negative feedback loop is what happens because ADHD kids receive exponentially more negative comments than they do positive ones. I'm not exactly sure of the statistic, but it is high that in their lifetime, up until the point of teenage years, they hear a lot of negative comments, they see a lot of negative looks, they feel the negative energy from others. And so that prevents them from getting the help that they need because they're so fused with this negative identity, this negative persona that that becomes who they are. And I've heard teenagers tell me where they don't know how to give up that person because if I'm not that person, then who am I? If I'm not the one that's causing the drama in my family, then who am I? If I'm not the one that's always getting bad grades and my parents always have to come to the school to talk to my teacher, and I'm not the class clown and I'm not the immature one, I'm not the silly one, and who am I? And that often is why I see that they're so resistant to therapy and these different interventions that can help because that makes them feel damaged, that makes them feel that they don't know what else to do with that. If I'm not this, then who am I? And also to change, to say that the therapy is helping, that the interventions are helping, is also to admit that something needed to be changed. That it wasn't just my brother, it wasn't just my sister, it wasn't just my father or my family, my mother. It was me, that I was the problem. And that's hard to admit. That is hard for anybody's ego. You don't have to be full of yourself to admit that, wow, I need to change something because I'm the problem. Me, hi, I'm the problem. It's me. Like that's hard to admit. And So here's a few things that I've suggested to families of teenagers, specifically with ADHD, because I hear that a lot of the strategies that you hear out there in the parenting world and all these wonderful books and these researchers, they really do cater a lot to parents of toddlers, to school age kids, but sometimes the teenagers get forgotten. A lot of those strategies are not going to work as well because a lot of the traditional parenting strategies that work for kids who are easygoing, easy to warm up, responsive, you don't need to do much because they kind of just go with the flow, and the traditional parenting strategies work really well. But to parent a child with ADHD, a lot of the traditional and typical parenting strategies are not going to work as well. Um, and a lot of the strategies includes doing less, and it takes time. And that is something that parents don't want to hear. I get it. It takes time because it's not about more strategies, it's about the relationship. And I think that's the case for most parenting, but especially parenting a teenager with ADHD. It's about the relationship. So here's one thing. Okay. A lot of parents I speak to talk about how their teenager doesn't want to hear the word no. They don't want to hear no, you can't, or stop. And what I find is this is what helps. Repeat the request back to them in their words, exact words. Don't change the tone, don't change the wording, just repeat the tone back. I'll give you an example in a moment. Repeat it again because they'll escalate. So repeat it back with that escalation, that emotion, bringing in the validation. And then speak to the need driving the comment, the behavior, the statement. What are they really saying? And then engage them in problem solving. A lot of teenagers have this dysregulation with their ADHD because everything is dysregulated. Remember, ADHD is an emotional dysregulate, executive functioning, executive functioning dysregulation disorder. Executive functioning dysregulation disorder, which means everything is dysregulated. Emotions, thoughts, behaviors, academics, friendships, relationships with family. Like a lot of things are dysregulated. Memory, recall, following through, attention, like lots of things are dysregulated. So you repeat, reflect back with the validation, speak to the need behind the behavior, and you engage them in problem solving. So it might sound like this. A teenager's asking you to go out with their friends, but you know these friends they want to go out with. And you don't really feel very good about the decisions these friends make. Hey, mom, can I go out with my friends on Friday? You want to go out with your friends on Friday? Yeah, so can I go out with my friends on Friday? I really want to go. You really want to go out with your friends on Friday. You love hanging out with them. That's really important to you. Yeah, it is. So can I go? So here's the thing. I hear that you want to go out with them, but I'm concerned because of the decisions that they make and the decisions that you make when you're with them. And I know how important hanging out with them and being liked is, but I'm also concerned about the decisions that you make. So how can we resolve this issue? What can we do about these concerns that you feel pressured sometimes to engage in some behaviors that you later regret or that you feel bad about or guilty about later? So what's the solution to this? Because I want you to hang out with your friends too, but I also have some concerns. And you engage them, you repeat it back to them, tell them what you're thinking. You're not saying no outright. You're engaging in a conversation. You're helping build a skill of critical thinking, problem solving. And you want them to think of, okay, yes, you're right. I do make poor decisions when I'm with them, but I also like hanging out with them. So then what do we do about this? How can we resolve this push pull of me wanting to hang out with these friends, but also knowing that they make bad decisions and that I make bad decisions when I'm with them? Okay, not saying this is flawless, but it's about this conversation. It's about helping your teen feel understood and engaging them in a discussion. Okay. All right. So again, you repeat it back in their words. You escalate the message with them, validating those feelings and those thoughts and everything that go along with it. Speak to the need behind the behavior. It's really important to you that you hang out with these friends. And then you engage them in problem solving so that they can think about, okay, how can I hang out with these people? How can I hang out with friends, but then still not get myself in trouble and make my parent feel comfortable with me doing this? Okay. The other thing too is when you escalate the message along with them and really discuss with them how much you see that it's important to them that they want to do this thing. They don't have to escalate so much. They don't have to escalate their message because you're escalating it for them and with them. You're expressing to them, I see how important this thing is to you. And I get it. It makes sense to me. You make sense to me. I totally get it. I get why this is so important to you. And that way they don't have to prove to themselves, or sorry, they don't have to prove to you how important and how significant and how determined they are to do this thing because they see that my parent, my caregiver gets it. So it's the same thing if my son says, oh, waking up on Monday after a long holiday weekend is the worst. Oh my gosh, I know, right? I had the hardest time waking up this morning. Me too. And last night was so terrible, Mom. I could not sleep properly. Me neither. I kept getting up. I was having all kinds of weird dreams. Me too. This was literally a conversation I had with my 11-year-old. So again, with preteens and teens, they want to feel understood. They want to feel like you get it. He didn't have to escalate. He didn't have to like prove to me how miserable he felt on a Monday morning after a long holiday break because he saw that I already got it. I'm actually joining him in the misery. And that's where the next thing is joining in the resistance. I say that a lot in a lot of my courses on my Instagram. Joining in the resistance is so crucial. And it's so crucial because you want them to get that you get it. But they don't have to prove to you how miserable waking up on a Monday after a long holiday weekend is. You don't have to prove to them, they don't have to prove to you like that you need to understand where they're coming from because you're already communicating that you get it, that you totally understand. So joining them in the resistance is really important because you're speaking to the real need, you're speaking to the real message, and you're not getting involved in this big argument like, why are you so tired? You should have gone to bed early. You know, I told you to go to bed early. Monday is not a big deal. Mondays are bad for everybody. It's, you'll be fine. That's invalidating. And that's why they escalate. That's why they get upset because, again, once again, you don't get me. You don't understand me. You're not hearing me. And that is the biggest thing I hear as a psychologist to teens when I have sessions and therapy sessions with them. Their biggest complaint about adults, teachers, caregivers, parents, is they don't feel understood. They feel like this weird anomaly that nobody else gets. So those are my quick tips for you, specifically parenting teens with ADHD, because I know how hard it is. I hear so much, especially this time of year, and it is tough. And the biggest thing is less strategies, and it's about the relationship. Because again, remember, they're scanning you. They're scanning their environment and they're sensitive to rejection. So if you're doing these things, but you're not staying consistent with it, if you seem fake, if you seem like you're just doing it to get a good result, but you don't feel like they don't feel like you're genuinely present and there, it's not going to work. So you want to stay present and focused and engaged, and that you are prioritizing them as a whole person, that you're prioritizing your relationship. And that's what's most important. So thanks for tuning in. And it is a process. I encourage you to be fully present with your teen and enjoy and delight in them and help them to feel like they're not a burden, that they're not flawed, they're not broken, they don't need to be rescued or fixed, that they have a parent who completely and totally adores them, even when they're at their worst. Thanks for tuning in.